All right, Daryl. Well, first, I want to, again, thank you for allowing me to come into your home and meet you. I've wanted to do this for a long time, so I really appreciate the time, and welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You got it. As I mentioned before we started recording, I always like to get the genesis story of people that I meet and how they end up doing what they do in life. We were talking offline earlier about you growing up internationally overseas. What is the basic story of how you got involved in your, I don't even know if I'd call it activism work, but your engagement work with groups in the country that would seem strange, or organizations that are you didn't have a lot of exposure to until you were later in life. What's kind of your initial background story of where you grew up and how you got into the U.S.?
Okay, sure. Well, I was born in Chicago. I'm age 63, born in 1958. And my father was one of the first black Secret Service agents in this country. And then he went from the Secret Service to the U.S. Foreign Service. And at the age of 3 in 1961, we began traveling abroad for the U.S. State Department. I grew up as an American Embassy brat. And how it works is the State Department assigns you to a country, a foreign country, for 2 years. At the end of that tour of duty, you come back to the States. You may be here for a few months, perhaps a year, and then you get reassigned to another country for 2 years. So back and forth, back and forth. So my formative years growing up, from age 3, to my early teens, I was in different countries every 2 years. And I did, my first exposure to school, kindergarten, was overseas. First grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade were overseas. Now, here's the thing, and this is, I think, a very crucial part of my story. Being exposed to school for the first time overseas, my classes were filled with kids from all over the world. Anybody who had an embassy in those particular countries to which we were assigned, all of their kids went to the same school. My classmates were from Italy, Nigeria, Japan, Czechoslovakia, France, Germany, Sweden, Australia, Russia, you name it. If they had an embassy, their kids were in my school. And that being my first exposure to school, that became my norm. That became my baseline. Right? We all got along. They may not have looked like me. Some of them spoke different languages than I spoke, right? But we all got along. We worked together. We played together. We had slumber parties together. Whatever, little kids do. If you were to open the door to my classroom and pop your head in, your first exclamation would be, "This looks like a United Nations of little children."
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what it was. Well, of course, at the end of the 2 years, I would return home with my parents. I would be, at that point, in either all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated schools or the newly integrated ones. And there was not the amount of diversity in this country at the time that I had overseas. So that was reflective in my classrooms. It was either all black kids or black and white kids.
Yeah.
And this is, in the 1960s, in the early 60s, right? Now, even though desegregation was passed by the Supreme Court in 1954, it didn't just change overnight. It took decades in some cases for schools to become, integrated. So one of the times when I came back home in 1968, at the age of 10, I was in the 4th grade, and we had moved to Belmont, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. I was one of 2 black children in the entire elementary school. There was me in 4th grade, and there was a little black girl in 2nd grade. So I wasn't really friends with her. I was aware of her, but she wasn't my age group. So I only saw her like at lunchtime in the cafeteria or at recess. All of my friends are 4th and 5th graders. So consequently, they all were white. several of my male friends were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join. So it sounded like fun, go camping, tie knots, do whatever, Scouts do. So I joined. And one day we had this parade. We participated in a parade, I should say, right next door to Belmont, from Lexington, Massachusetts to Concord, Massachusetts, which was the route that Paul Revere rode. And so we're all celebrating that. The Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, 4-H Club, and other organizations. So I was the only Black Scout that I could see. Not that I was looking for anybody, you just notice it, in this parade. And everything was going along smoothly. We're marching down the streets. Streets are blocked off. Sidewalks are filled with nothing but white people, waving and cheering, smiling, having a good time. We got to a certain point in this parade route, and suddenly I was getting hit with rocks and bottles and soda pop cans and things like that. And it wasn't everybody doing this. It was just I'd say maybe between 4 and 5 people off to my right on the sidewalk. They were all white people. I remember there being a couple kids and a couple adults throwing things. They were standing together. So I assumed maybe it was kids and their parents. I don't know. But my first thought was, these people over here to my right, they don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was. I thought everybody was being targeted. I didn't realize that I was the only object of these projectiles. I realized that when my den mother, my cub master, my troop leader all came running over. These were white people. And they huddled over me and covered me with their own bodies and moved me along, rushed me along. And then I realized nobody else is getting this special treatment. So now I'm trying to blame myself. Like, what did I didn't do anything. What did I do? Why are they mad at me? I didn't do anything. And why are they doing this? All they would do is kind of shush me and rush me along. Daryl, hurry up, move along. It'll be okay. Go on, keep going. They never answered my question as to why this was happening. So at the end of the parade, we all go home. I went home. My mother and father were not at the parade. They were at home. And when they saw me, I was all scratched up and stuff. And they were cleaning me up and putting Band-Aids on me and all that stuff. And they were asking me, how did I fall down and get all scraped up? They thought I tripped or something. I told them, I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what had happened. And they sat me down. And they explained to me why this had happened to me. Now, understand my background. This is very important. I did not believe my parents. I literally thought they were lying to me because, several reasons. One, it made no sense. These people didn't know me. What do you mean they were trying to do this because of my skin color? That didn't even make sense. I'd never heard of anybody attacking somebody because of their skin color. I grew up around all kinds of skin colors, right? I had East Indians in my class. I had Asians in my class, people from Spain, people from Mexico, people from, Croatia, it was Yugoslavia back then, and different places. All kinds of skin tones. And these people are throwing rocks at me because of my skin. I thought my mom and dad were lying to me. It made no sense. And so I did not believe my parents. And that's one reason. Second reason is the people doing it did not look any different to me than the people in my class or my fellow scouts or their parents. And they didn't treat me like that. So why, and they know me. Why are these people who look like them, who don't know me, treating me like that? Nothing made sense. So I did not accept their reason that it was the color of my skin that was causing these people to do this. That was the first time ever in my life that I thought my folks had lied to me. Well, about a month and a half or so later, that same year, on April the 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And I remember it very well, nearby Boston, every major city in this country. My hometown, Chicago, right here where we are, Washington, D.C., all burned to the ground in the name of this new word that I had learned a couple months prior called racism. So now I understood that this phenomenon that my parents tried to explain to me called racism, it does exist, but I didn't know why. Why do people hate one another and try to hurt one another over nothing more than skin color? It just made no sense. So I formed a question in my mind at that time, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And I've been seeking out the answer for the next 53 years. I would ask people, they say, oh, well, Daryl, that's just the way some people are. That's just the way it is. Well, that wasn't good enough. Well, why? Why do they think like that? Well, that's just how it is. Some people just feel that way. Well, but there has to be a reason. Nobody was giving me a reason that would placate and say, oh, okay, I get it now. Okay, fine. No, it was no satisfaction. As an adolescent and on through, my adulthood, I would buy books. I have tons of books on Black supremacy, white supremacy, the KKK, the Nazis in Germany, the neo-Nazis over here, anti-Semitism, racism. All my books talk about it, but they don't give me a satisfactory answer to justify why it happens.
Your curiosity to answer that question, it sounds like, as you just mentioned, you began to read a lot to try to answer that question. But as your life began to unfold, especially as an adult, you began to engage personally, to do personal research to try to answer that question. Was there a point at which, or an interaction or a meeting, a specific individual that really launched you into this different phase of life where you were beginning to dedicate large chunks of your own time, energy, resources to getting to know the very people that probably would have thrown those rocks and bottles at you at that parade?
Yeah, I mean, there was a chain of events. I went back overseas shortly after that incident because, we were assigned to another country. And when I went back overseas, I was returned to normalcy, if you will. That was the norm, being around everybody from all over the world. That was my norm. But every time I'd come home back here, there would be some incident. One time, I'm here, I'm in 10th grade. We had a class called the POTC, which stood for Problems of the 20th Century. And it was a class for seniors, 12th graders. I was taking it as a sophomore, 10th grader. I loved my teacher. We had a great teacher. And he was always bringing in controversial speakers to talk to the class. This is 1974. I'm age 15. And, the speakers would talk to the class and we could ask them questions or whatever. On this particular day, in 1974, he brought in the head of the American Nazi Party to our high school. And, now you got to understand something. This is the 1970s. You could never do that today. Right. I'm glad he did it. I'm glad he did it because, that put me on a trajectory. Right. Okay. So let me give you a little bit of background on the American Nazi Party. The American Nazi Party was founded by a fellow named George Lincoln Rockwell, who was a big proponent of the ideology of Adolf Hitler. George Lincoln Rockwell was always getting into it with Martin Luther King, and he was a vicious anti-Semite and racist. And later, I would have one of his daughters as a teacher. She wanted nothing to do with him. She had long disowned him. Anyway, the American Nazi Party was founded right across the river, right across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., in Arlington, Virginia, by George Lincoln Rockwell. George Lincoln Rockwell was later murdered by one of his own American Nazis, a guy named John Palter. He and John Palter got into it on the sidewalk one day, right outside of a laundromat or dry cleaners, not too far from the headquarters. And Palter killed him right there on the sidewalk. So George Lincoln Rockwell's right-hand guy at the time was a guy named Matt Cole, Koehl. And so Matt Cole became the leader of the American Nazi Party, the commander, as they call him. And his right-hand guy became a guy named Martin Kerr, Kerr. So on this day in 1974, Matt Cole and Martin Kerr came to my school. And they're standing up at the front of the classroom espousing all these views of white supremacy. There was one other black guy in the classroom besides me. And then there were more in the school, but in this particular class. And Matt Cole pointed at me and pointed at my friend and said, "We're going to ship you back to Africa." And then he took his index finger and made a sweeping semicircle motion with his hand and said, "All you Jews out there, you're going back to Africa." And I just sat there looking at this guy like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But I didn't challenge him. I just sat there very quietly looking at him. I wasn't afraid of him, but I never heard an adult talk like that. And, you know, I was raised that you always have respect for your elders as figures of authority, whether they're the postman, your teacher, your librarian, the police, your neighbor, whoever was older than you was your elder. And that's supposed to be a figure of authority. So I didn't challenge him. Not that I believed him, but I just sat there looking at him. And one of my classmates said, "What happens if they don't want to go?" And Matt Cole said, "Oh, they have no choice. If they do not leave voluntarily, they will be exterminated in the upcoming race war." That was the first time I ever heard the term race war. I'm thinking, what is this man talking about? Race war? And that's what prompted me to get all these books, and even more books, and study this stuff. So later that day, I was standing by my locker in the hallway doing something, and Matt Cole and Martin Kerr were leaving the school. They'd been there all day because they had other POTC classes to go to. They had to walk past me to go out the front office, out the front door of the building. They paused just a few feet from me and looked at me. They didn't say anything to me, but they sneered at me and started laughing. And then they kept on going down the hall to the front of the building and out. I never forgot that. Fast forward 8 years. 2 years later, I graduated from high school in 1976. 4 years later, in 1980, I graduated from college. And music became my profession, but studying race relations became my obsession. And there was nowhere, you could go to study it back then. There were no courses on it. So you had to self-educate. And so I kept up with a lot of that stuff. And I developed some contacts here and there that knew some things, knew some people, had inside information here and there, and that kind of stuff. I met up with some dangerous people too, who were, they weren't racist, but they were anti-racist, but they were just as dangerous as the racists, I'll tell you a quick story. Back then, you could drive your vehicle up and down the 1600 block of Pennsylvania Avenue, which is where the White House is located. And you could just walk into the Capitol building. It's the People's House, the Capitol. There were no metal detectors, anything like that, no concrete pylons, so you couldn't pull your car up. Well, all that changed. People kept trying to ram their vehicles through the gates of the White House, right? So now they stopped all that. Somebody planted a bomb in the doorway of Senator Robert Byrd from West Virginia, in the doorway of his office in the Senate. And nobody got hurt. The bomb went off and blew out the door frame and stuff. Nobody was in the office, fortunately, at the time. But a lot of damage was done. From that point forward, they put up metal detectors, put up concrete pylons around the Capitol, so you could, breach it until January 6th, right? So anyway, the law enforcement got involved in trying to track down the people who planted this bomb. And I knew one of those people. I met one of those people when I would go to these anti-racist meetings, and it's like, whoa, I need to stay away from these people. I didn't realize, they were involved in this kind of crazy nonsense. So I figured, I better just do this on my own. And so 8 years later, in 1982, the American Nazi Party had an unpublicized protest out in front of the White House. There is a park across the street from the White House called Lafayette Park, which is where everybody goes if they want to protest something. And 24/7, 365 days a year, I'm not exaggerating, there is somebody in the park protesting something. They spend the night there. People have been there for years. They protest nuclear weapons, abortion, the war in the Middle East. You name it. You got an issue, global warming, whatever. You got an issue, you go to Lafayette Park, you face the White House, you hold up your billboards, so you think whoever's in the Oval Office will look out the window and read your issue and solve it. So anyway, the American Nazi Party was going to have a silent protest, unpublicized, which means nobody knows about it, not even the police, unless they tell somebody. I found out about it. So this is 8 years after I met Matt Cole. And so I go down there. I'm 2 years out of college now. I'm an adult. And I parked my car catty corner to the White House, because back then you could drive there. And I waited. They'll be there at 12 noon. So 12 noon, here comes this van. About 13, 14, 15 of these people get out of this van, these American Nazis. There's Matt Cole. There's Martin Kerr. You never forget the face of somebody who tells you they're going to ship you somewhere, whether you like it or not. You have no choice but to go or be exterminated, right? I watched Matt Cole get his little Nazis lined up facing the White House. Now, there was nothing that indicated that they were Nazis. There were no swastikas or SS insignias. They all were in no Gestapo uniforms. They all were in dark black suits. And they lined up standing there. I knew they were Nazis because I recognized Matt and Martin. It's lunchtime in Washington, D.C. People are walking up and down the sidewalk, passing them, not even knowing who they are. Like I said, there's always somebody in that park protesting. I knew who they were. So once he got them all lined up, I walked over. I felt the need. I had to confront Matt Cole because I did not confront him when I was in high school because of that dynamic. I was a child. He was my elder. He was an adult. So you have respect for your adult elders, right? But now I felt the need to confront him because, yes, he was still my elder, but the dynamic had changed. In 1974, it was child to adult. Now I'm 2 years out of college. It's adult to adult, right? So I could confront him. So I walked right up to him and I said, Matt Cole. He jumped in the line like, who is this black person who knows my name, right? And he says, do I know you? And all these Nazis are like looking like, what's going on here? And I said, well, you spoke at my high school. And he said, and what high school would that be? And I named my high school. He looked at me again. He goes, yes. I remember you. That was a long time ago. What can I do for you? And I said, do you remember what you told me? Yes. He nodded his head. How can I help you? I said, well, I'm still here. And he says, well, I can see that. What can I do for you? I said, well, you can explain to me just who the hell gives you the authority to make permanent travel arrangements for me. He looks at me and he goes, what's your name? I said, Daryl Davis. He put out his hand and he shook my hand and he held my hand tight in his hand. He didn't let it go. So he held my hand with his right hand, right? And he took his left hand and shook his index finger in my face. And he says, what's your name? I said, Daryl Davis. He said, Mr. Davis, you have to understand one thing. It is in the interest of your race, the black race, to be a strong race. And you cannot be a strong race unless you are a pure race. And you cannot be a pure race if you are miscegenating with other races. It is in the interest of my race the Aryan race, which is what he calls the white race, to also be a strong race. We are committing genocide by miscegenating with mud races such as yours. We are becoming a mongrel race. So anybody who was a non-Aryan is considered a mud race. And so he's thinking that his race is getting wiped out through miscegenation. And he calls that white genocide. So, he went on, espousing these views. Now, I wasn't there to beat him up. I was there to learn from him. Where's this mentality coming from? I read all these books by now, but now I need to really have a one-on-one with somebody and try to understand the mindset. Not accept it, but get a sense of why they think this way. So he went on, and I thanked him, and I shook his hand again. And Martin Kerr just standing there like looking at us. And then I left. Later that summer, they had a publicized rally. And it had been publicized for like 3 months. So everybody knew the Nazis were coming to D.C. And, well, the headquarters was in D.C., but they're coming from all over the country to D.C. Matt Cole announced he was going to have his National American Nazi Party recruitment rally in Washington, D.C. to recruit more people into the American Nazi movement. Now, here's the thing. People protested for 3 months not to give them a permit.
Yeah.
But you have to. Because, they're entitled to their rights, right? Whether you like them or not. So the day came, and protesters, there were tens of thousands of protesters, came to D.C. from Richmond, from New York, from Philadelphia, Baltimore. They just converged on D.C. A lot of them came to do violence, to attack the Nazis. And the police had made arrangements with the Nazis to meet, all of them to congregate, meet at some point, some undisclosed location over in Prince George's County. And they were going to put them on a chartered bus so they'd all be together and escort them into the area, and then make a big human circle around them with different police departments in the D.C. area. All right. So they came in this bus, and there were only about 50, maybe a few less than 50. But because they're cowards, and because they had police protection, they wore their Gestapo uniforms. They were holding their swastika flags and SS insignias. And as my secretary and I went down there to watch this, and you couldn't get to them because there's the police. And the protesters, they had bricks and chains, baseball bats, you name it. They were there to do damage. And there's Matt Cole and Martin Kerr and these Nazis coming off the bus, and they're taunting the crowd. Sieg Heil, Hi Hitler, white power, all this kind of stuff, right? And the people are like rushing the police. The police have their shields and batons, pushing them back. And now the protesters are getting frustrated because they can't get to the Nazis in the circle. So they began throwing things over the heads of the police to land on one of the Nazis, bricks and pieces of cinder block and whatever. And so the police got pissed and pulled out their tear gas and began shooting the protesters. Protesters began picking up the tear gas canisters and throwing them back at the police. And the police went crazy. Protesters went crazy. Protesters began turning over police cars upside down, bashing out the windows, setting things on fire. You know what goes on in a riot, right? The police went crazy. They began beating everybody with their batons. My secretary and I are just standing there watching this, and we got beat with the baton for just standing there by the police. A lot of other things happened. Anyway, I said, come on, let's get out of here. So we leave. We're watching the news. Now, back then, all you had was ABC, NBC, and CBS, no cable. And we're watching our local NBC affiliate. They're showing the riot during the day on 6 o'clock news or whatever. There's Matt Cole sitting in the studio with the anchor. I even saw myself walk by on some of the footage. Anyway, he's saying, you see, it's the blacks and the Jews who are destroying the place. They're the ones turning over the police cars and breaking out windows. You don't see Nazis doing that, you know? I'm watching this, and then it dawned on me. Because I didn't know, why would Matt Cole have his national, even though he's headquartered in Washington, D.C., why would he have his national recruitment rally for the American Nazi Party in Washington, D.C.? Washington, D.C. is 2/3 black. There are no black people in Washington, D.C. who want to be recruited into the American Nazi Party. And there are no Jews in Washington, D.C. or anywhere else that I know who want to be recruited into the Nazi Party. So why D.C.? When I saw that footage, it clicked. I realized, that's a smart guy. You know, he's wrong, but he's a smart guy. He knew exactly what he was doing. He held the rally in D.C. because he knew this would happen. He knew a riot would happen, and he knew all the news, CBS, ABC, NBC, would be there. And he could get that footage. He takes that footage, he goes out to the Pacific Northwest and shows that footage out there. It says, you see what's going on in our nation's capital? The Jews and the blacks are taking over. ZOG is taking over. ZOG is a white supremacist acronym, ZOG. It stands for Zionist Occupied Government. Okay, look it up. And, ZOG is taking over. This country is being run by ZOG. Come join us. We're going to take our country back. He shows that footage. And guess what? He brings in a lot of people. Sure enough, it's a recruitment tool. It's propaganda. Smart guy. And the Klan would do the same thing later on. So I realized what he was doing. Anyway, Matt Cole passed away, I think, back in 2013. He was still, doing that crazy stuff. Martin Kerr, his right-hand guy, he was in Charlottesville that day of the big white supremacist rally. Anyway, so I learned that, and I began to understand how they do things. Well, then country music had made a resurgence. And I got involved in playing with country bands. And one time I was up in Frederick, Maryland, and I went to this all-night restaurant to get something to eat after a gig. And when I pulled into the parking lot, I saw a scene. This is like about, 1 o'clock in the morning. There was a woman lying on the sidewalk on her back, right outside the restaurant. And there was a man straddled sitting on her stomach. And he was banging her head into the sidewalk and hitting her in the face with his hand. And there were about 4 or 5 other guys standing around watching this. These are all white people. They were watching him do this. Nobody was calling the police that I could see. And, we didn't have cell phones back then. But there were phone booths right there. It's a truck stop. And they're standing there watching. I parked, maybe 20 feet away, 30 feet away. And when I got out of the car and closed my door, I guess it jarred the guy who was on top of the woman. He looked up and he saw me standing there looking at him because I was ready to come over there. And he says, "What the fuck you looking at? You want a piece of me, nigger?" To me, that was open invitation. So I said, "Yeah." And he got up off of her and he came at me. And I beat the daylights out of him. I hurt him. And he went down. At that point, one of the guys, or 2 of them, whatever, in that group that were watching, they ran inside the door right there where all the phone booths were and called the police. So they're not going to call the police on this guy beating the daylights out of this woman. But when a black guy beats the daylights out of him, they go call the police. These 2 Frederick County police officers show up, right? And, I wanted this guy arrested. I did not get hurt, but I wanted him arrested for assaulting me. And they wouldn't arrest him. They told me to stand over here, and they pulled him over there. And they're talking to him, these 2 cops. Something was not right. I could not put my finger on it, but something was not right. I felt it, I could see it, and I didn't know what it was. But they told him that he needed to leave the property. And if he were to set foot on the property within 24 hours, they would have to arrest him for trespassing. And they sent him away. I'm like, I want his information, right? Because they were not going to arrest. What they told me was, well, we didn't see him assault you. I said, what difference does that make? I'm pressing charges. Well, we can't arrest him. I said, well, I want his information. So they had to give me his information, right? So he left. I went inside the restaurant. I got some ice and a towel. I put it on the lady's head, put it on her face, helped her out. I said, listen, if you want to go to court against this guy, I got his information. She said, well, I know who he is. And I said, okay. I said, well, if you want me to be a witness for you, I'll be happy to. And you can be a witness for me that he tried to assault me. She says, yeah, that'd be great. So we exchanged phone numbers. All right. So then, if you want somebody arrested and the police are not going to do it, you have to go to the police station, to the commissioner, and swear out, a complaint or whatever, right? So I go down to the police station. I don't even go inside the restaurant to eat. I'm so, angry with these cops. So I go down to their station. I want to see the commissioner. So by now it's like 1:30, 1:45 in the morning. So he gives me the thing to fill out to get this guy arrested, and I have all the information, wrote down what happened, and so I'm saying to the guy, how long before this thing will be served on him? And it's a subpoena, whatever, summons, and he says, well, probably 2 or 3 days. I sign it, send it down to the sheriff's office, and then one of the deputies goes out and serves him. We process it right here. I said, okay. And so I'm continuing filling it out. And he goes, oh, and then I looked up, and through the plate glass window, which was, we were inside his office. He had like a window. Here comes the guy that I beat up. Here he comes inside the police station in handcuffs with 2 Maryland state troopers. Not the county cops, 2 Maryland state troopers, one on either side of him holding his arms, and he's handcuffed behind his back. I said, that's him right there. That's the guy right there. And the commissioner says, sign the paper. I'll sign it and I'll serve him right now. So I said, okay. I signed it. He signed it. He walks out there, rolls up the thing, and sticks it in between the guy's arms. Says, you've been served. So he talks to the troopers and everything. They lead the guy on into processing or whatever, and he's going to jail for something. I didn't know what would happen. He talked to the commissioner. They talked to the commissioner. Then he comes back in. I said, what's going on? Well, what happened was this dude, after he left and the cops left, he came back to the restaurant looking for me because he was going to settle the score. Yeah. And he walks into the restaurant, couldn't find me, finds some other black guy and starts some stuff. And so the police get called. This time, the state police, they heard the call or whatever. They got there before the county or whatever. State police don't play. County police, they play. So anyway, the state police, they don't know this guy. They don't care about this guy. They lock it, they arrest him, take him out. So they take him to the jail at the police station, holding cell. So then, a couple months later is the trial date, the hearing date. That's a story in itself. Which I won't go into a whole lot of. I'll just skip ahead. I went down and picked up the lady. And on the way to the courthouse, she's telling me that was her ex-fiance. That's how she knows him. And she had dumped him because he was seeing somebody else. And he had gotten this girl pregnant, the other girl. And she also told me that he was a firefighter. He was a fireman in the county fire department. That explained it to me. What I saw was weird. Of course the cops knew him. That's why they let him go. I didn't understand that. Firefighters and police officers, they often respond to the same situations, right? So they're giving him a break, saying, leave or we're going to have to arrest you. They knew each other. And he was a lieutenant on the county fire department. Then she tells me he's a Klansman. So I beat up this Klansman. I didn't care. I didn't care if he's a Klansman or not. All I knew was he was beating up a woman. The The fact he's a firefighter, the fact that he's a Klansman meant nothing to me. What you're doing is wrong. And so, we got to court. Long story short, the judge ruled in favor of me. And, I'd not been charged with anything, but he had torn my leather coat when he grabbed me, and I got it fixed. But the judge awarded me the price of the whole coat, which was like just under $500 was a full length leather coat. And his fiance was there, his new fiance. When he saw me walk in with his ex-fiance, he turned beet red, and the new fiance knew nothing about what he had done. What his attorney said to the judge, Your Honor, my client was celebrating. He got promoted from sergeant to lieutenant on the county police force. He was celebrating, and he had a little too much to drink, and he mouthed off to Mr. Davis, and then an altercation ensued. And so he's really, really sorry. And he said nothing about him beating up this woman. And so when I spoke, I told what happened, which was totally left out by the attorney. The new fiance knew nothing about that. He was still trying, because what he was beating her up for was he still wanted to see her.
Yeah.
He wanted his cake and eat it too. And the new one didn't know this. She got pissed. She had her sweater that was sitting beside him, beside her on the bench, because he's up there at the table. She picked it up and threw it at him and walked out of the courtroom, right? And so the old fiance, she gets up with me and confirms what I was saying. And so the judge went off on this guy, and made him pay me this money, told him do not contact me directly, to give the money to his attorney, and then the attorney will send it to me. That way there's no contention. So that was my my first experience in a nutshell with a KKK person. But then my next experience was a lot better. Same area. I'm inside a lounge called the $Silver Lounge, which is where a lot of Klansmen would hang out. And I didn't know that at the time. But I played with this country band. And my first time in there, and it was an all-white lounge. Blacks were allowed in, but they didn't go in because they knew the reputation. I didn't know it at the time. And even if I did, I'd probably still go in. That's just how I am. And anyway, this guy approached me on the break, and he was really excited about the music and the band. He was enjoying himself, and he says, that he'd seen the band before, but he'd never seen me before. Where did I come from? I said, yeah, the band has played here, but I just joined them recently, my first time here. He says, man, this is the first time I ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. And I was looking at this guy like, what? Doesn't he know the black origin of that style of music? And apparently he didn't. And I informed him, and he's like, no, Jerry Lee invented that. Man, I ain't never heard no black man play like that, except for you. So I assured him, I said, look, man, Jerry Lee Lewis is a good friend of mine. I know him personally. I said, he's told me himself, the people who've influenced him and people he's seen and got that boogie-woogie feel from. Nah, he didn't believe that either. Jerry Lee didn't get anything from any black people. But he was so fascinated, he wanted me to come back to his table and let him buy me a drink. Now, I don't drink alcohol, I never did. But I went back to his table, and I got a cranberry juice. He paid the waitress. He cheers me, clinks my glass with his. And he says, this is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a black man. And now I'm completely mystified. Again, you got to remember my background. I've been around people from all over the world. I've never just been with one group of people my whole life. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's at least a decade and a half older than me. He's never sat down before with a black guy? How can this be? Because I sat down with every shade of color in the world. And I asked him, I said, why? He didn't answer me. I asked him again. He looked down at the tabletop, just, like he's hiding some secret. And his buddy who's sitting next to him elbowed him. He said, tell him. And I'm looking at both of them yeah, now, what's this mystery? Tell me. And he says, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I started laughing. I just busted out laughing because my only experience with the Klansmen had been the one that I beat up.
Yeah.
Right? Number one, and that was my only personal experience. I knew a lot about the Klan because I've got every book written on the Klan. I've read them all. I know the mentality. And I know they don't just come up and put their arm around you and praise your piano playing and want to hang out and buy you a drink. It doesn't work that way. So I figured, this dude is making a joke. It's funny, I'm laughing. And he goes inside his pocket and pulls out his billfold and flips through. And he handed me his Klan membership card. I looked at this thing. I recognized the Klan insignia. And I stopped laughing. This thing was for real. And I gave it back to him. And now I'm sitting there wondering, my mind is racing like, what the hell am I doing sitting at a table, with a Klan member? But the dude was friendly. He was very nice, very friendly, very complimentary, ignorant, yeah. But, I didn't feel threatened or anything like that. So I continued sitting there and we talked. We talked about the Klan and different things. He gave me his phone number, wanted me to call him whenever I came back to this bar with this band, because he wanted to bring his friends, meaning Klansmen and Klanswomen, to see, as he referred to me, the black guy who plays like Jerry Lee. So I said, okay, I'll call you. And I called him every 6 weeks. We were on a rotation with other bands. I called him in midweek, Wednesday or Thursday, and said, hey, man, we're going to be down at the Silver Dollar. Come on out. He'd come out both nights, Friday and Saturday. He'd bring Klansmen and Klanswomen with him. And they'd gather around near the stage and watch me play with the band. They'd get out on the dance floor. They'd dance, carry on. And on the break, I'd make my way over to his table, say hello. Some of them would hang there because, they were curious about me as well. They wanted to meet me and talk to me. Others would see me coming and they'd get up from their chairs and move to the other side of the room. So it was implied that, they didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to touch me, shake my hand. All they wanted to do was just, observe me, which was fine. So, this went on until the end of that year. And I quit that. I call him every 6 weeks, to, hey, man, we're going to be there. Come on out. He come. And so I quit that band around the end of the year, and I went back to playing rock and roll and blues and other genres of music. So I lost touch with him. I really had no reason to stay in contact with the Klan, right? And it dawned on me a long time later, Daryl, the answer to your question that's been plaguing you since the age of 10, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? It fell right into your lap, and you didn't even realize it. Who better to ask that question of, to get an answer, than ask somebody who would go so far as to join an organization whose whole premise is practicing hating people who don't look like you, or who don't look like them, and who don't believe as they do. Get back in contact with that Klansman, interview him, get him to fix you up with the leader of the Klan from Maryland, and then travel up north, travel down south, travel to Midwest, West, and interview other Klan leaders and members, and write a book, because no book had been written by a black author on the Ku Klux Klan from the perspective of sitting down face-to-face, interviewing them. There had been 2 books written by black authors that dealt with the Klan. Each author detailed how he escaped a lynching, one in the 1930s and one in the 1940s, but not from the perspective of sitting down interviewing their would-be lynchers. So your book will be the first book written. There it is there. So I decided that's, what I would do. So I had to hunt around because it had been a long time since I called that guy to find his number. I found his number on a piece of paper, where I'd written it or where he'd given it to me. And I called, and the number had been disconnected. So, like I said, it'd been a long time since I'd seen him. I had to track him down, and I found out that he had moved. He didn't have a phone, but he had an address. So I decided I'm going to go over to his place and knock on his door. I had no way of letting him know that I was coming because he had no phone, right? So one evening, I went by there, knock, knock, knock on the door. It's an apartment. And he opens the door. And he sees me. He goes, Daryl, what are you doing here? And he stepped out of his apartment into the hallway and looks up and down the hallway as though he's looking to see if I brought anybody with me or something. Well, when he stepped out of his apartment, I stepped in. So now I'm just inside his apartment. He turns around, comes back in. He goes, well, what's going on, man? Are you still playing? What's going on? I said, yeah, I'm still playing. But I need to talk to you about the Klan. He says, the Klan? I said, yeah, you're a member, right? He goes, well, I was. I said, was? He said, yeah, I quit. And he went into this long story as to why he quit the Klan. He wasn't quite accurate in his story, but I'll tell you about that in a second. Yes, he was out of the Klan now, but it wasn't that he had quit. He got kicked out. I found that out later on. Anyway, I said, well, where's all your Klan stuff? And he says, what do you mean my Klan stuff, my robe and hood? I said, yeah. He says, well, they came and got it. I said, what do you mean they came and got it? Don't you own your robe and hood? He explained to me, which I later found out to be true. When you join the Klan, you can pay for your robe and hood and your handbook and all these other things. You can pay for them, total up front, and they're yours to keep. If you don't have enough money, you can still take the stuff, the robe and hood and whatever else, but you pay them off. You add a little extra money in every time you pay your dues until it's paid off. So he had not paid off his robe and hood. And so they came and repoed it. And so, but he tells me that when they came to get it, he could not find the mask that covers the face that attaches to the hood. And he had since found it, and he needed to return it. I said, well, let me see it. He went down the hallway in his apartment, and he comes back and he hands me this mask. I'm looking at this thing, and I said, listen, you know Roger Kelly? Yeah, I know Roger. Roger was my Grand Dragon. Grand Dragon means state leader. Imperial Wizard means national leader. So in regular talk like you and I would do, we call our national leader the president, who oversees all our states. They call that person the Imperial Wizard. Anybody who is prefixed with the term imperial means that person is a national officer. Wizard is the highest officer. So imperial national president. An imperial caliph, it will be like a vice president. All right, and then you have secretary, treasurer, etc. They all have these names. Then under that, you have the next highest would be a state leader. We call state leaders governors. They call that the Grand Dragon. Anybody who is on the grand level means they're on the state level, state officer. Dragon being the highest in the state. A grand caliph would be like a lieutenant governor. And then secretary, treasurer, etc. at the state level. Grand this, grand that, etc. Within the state, you have counties. Some states call it or some counties call it the county manager or the county executive or whatever. They call that person the Great Titan. Anybody on the great level is on the county level. Within the county, you have districts. We call those leaders councilmen, mayors, aldermen, selectmen, things like that. They call them the exalted Cyclops. And then below the Cyclops is just rank and file plain clan members, plain white robe. These different ones have different colors on their robe, designate their rank. So anyway, this guy, Roger Kelly, was a state leader from Maryland, Grand Dragon. Yeah, I know Roger. Roger was my Grand Dragon. I said, well, listen, man, I need you to fix me up with Mr. Kelly. I want to interview him for a book I'm going to write. I want to start with him, then I'm going to travel around the country, interview other Klan people. I can't do that, Daryl. I said, why not, man? You're not in the Klan anymore. You won't get in trouble. Oh, no, you don't understand. I can't take a black man to the Grand Dragon. I said, well, look, I still have this mask in my hand. I said, look, you say you need to return this mask, right? Yeah. I said, give me Roger's phone number and address. I'll go to his house and I'll return it for you. He snatched that thing right out of my hand. He said, no way. I had to beg and plead with him for about 15 minutes before he finally gave me Mr. Kelly's phone number and address. And he made me promise that I would not tell Mr. Kelly where I got his information, but he was not going to let me take the hood, the mask. And he says, "Listen, Daryl, please don't go to Roger Kelly's house. Roger Kelly will kill you." I mean, this guy was genuinely concerned about my safety. I mean, he liked me for whatever reason. And anyway, I said, okay, I won't tell him where I got it. So then he says, if you really want to see Roger and the Klan, there's a bar up in Frederick. And he says it's a Klan bar. Now, not many of the Klan owns it, but it's where they hang out, up in Thurmont, Maryland. Thurmont is in Frederick County. And now you know Thurmont. You don't know it for the Klan, though, but you know it because it's the home of Camp David, the presidential retreat. But it's also one of the headquarters for the Klan. Thurmont is an all-white town. No black people. And anytime a black family moved there, mysteriously, a cross got burned in their yard. Or a gay couple, something like that, or interracial couple, cross. Right? They'd move out. Now, that's not to say that every white person in Thurmont is in the Klan, because they're not. Most white people in Thurmont do not like the Klan. They want the Klan out of there because they're ruining the reputation of the town.
Yeah.
Right? But that happened to be one of their headquarters. So anyway, he tells me about this bar up in Thurmont where the Klan hangs out in Frederick County. He says they're there every Saturday night unless they're out of town at a rally or something. And he says, he says you're safer to try to approach him on public property than go to his home. I said, okay. So he draws me, he drew me a little map how to get there. And he says, when you first walk in, there'll be a row of booths off to the left. And the two booths closest to the door, the first two booths closest to the door where you walk in, are reserved for the Klan. And that's where you'll see, Roger and other Klan people congregating around that area, if they're there on that Saturday night, unless they're out of town. I said, okay. So I didn't have any Saturdays. I mean, I'm a full-time musician, so I'm working during the weekends, I knew I had a few Sundays off. So I called my secretary. She books the band. And I said, listen, do I have any Sundays off? I'm telling her what I'm up to. She goes, yeah, you got this Sunday off, that Sunday, whatever. I said, okay. I figure, well, Sunday's still part of the weekend. Maybe I might find maybe even Roger Kelly or some remnants of the Klan on a Sunday. So I knew I couldn't do it on a Saturday. I'm working, I'm playing. So she wants to go with me. And she's white. I said, no. And, oh, come on, Daryl, I want to go. And she's always looking for action, and I know there's going to be action for a black man to walk into a Klan bar with a white woman. You're definitely going to find some action. So I did not want her to go for her safety, especially. But she was very insistent, so I said, okay, you can come, but you're coming at your own risk. She said, all right. So we set up the Sunday. We drove up to Frederick. I followed my guy's little map. And sure enough, boom, there it was, right where you said it. And we parked across the street, and we're sitting in my car looking at this place. And there are like 4 or 5 little steps onto a little stoop, and then the door, you go in. I'm trying to figure out now, how does a black man walk into a Klan bar with a white woman? None of my books talk about this, so there's no, procedure. And so I said, okay, listen, I'm going to walk in first. I want you to walk in right behind me. But if I turn around and face you, start running, and I'll be behind you. She says, all right. So we got out, locked the car. We walk up there. She's behind me. I walk up the steps. I open the door, and I walk right in. And she walks right in behind me. Now we're standing in the middle of this place. First thing I see on the back wall is this big Confederate flag. And on my right is this long wooden bar. And behind the bar is this mirror. And scotch taped to the mirror is a picture of Roger Kelly and an article from a newspaper, from the Washington Post. I recognized it because I have the same article. I was collecting all that stuff for, my research. So somebody had cut out this article and posted it on the mirror. So I knew I was in the right place, right? or the wrong place, depending on how you want to look at it. And over here to the left, just as the guy said, were the row of booths. And there was nobody in the first two booths. Both were empty. There was nobody in any other booths. This is about 7:30 on a Sunday evening. There were only, I would say, maybe 6 or 7 people in the whole place. The bartender, a couple of people sitting at the bar, a couple of people playing pool or something in the back, a couple of people just milling around. So she and I are just standing in the middle of this place, looking out of place and looking stupid, basically. You know, and I'm not looking at everybody. I knew what Roger Kelly looked like. I never met him, but I knew I've seen him on TV. I've seen him in the paper, you know, and wherever else. But I never met him. So I'm looking to see if any one of these people is him. None of them were him. But that did not mean that one of them couldn't be a Klan person. I mean, they all were white. But again, not everybody in Thurmont is in the Klan. So I don't know any Klan people. I mean, I didn't see the guy that I beat up, you know, so he wasn't in there that night. But anyway, I didn't see Roger Kelly. But I drove, you know, a good distance to get up there. I didn't want to leave empty-handed. But I didn't want to just go up to somebody and say, hey, excuse me, sir, are you in the Klan? You know. So I said to Mary, I said, come on, let's go over there and sit in one of those booths. Because if the Klan is in here, they'll come to us to get us out of their booth, right? So, and then, you know, when they come to us, then we can ask about, you know, Mr. Kelly. So we went over there and we sat down in the first booth. And nobody bothered us, you know, no problem whatsoever. And so, you know, we weren't, I was, you know, striking out. So I said, come on, you know, let's go sit over at the bar. We'll just chat up somebody sitting there. So we went over, sat at the bar, and I chatted up the guy sitting next to me. You know, I was asking him where the highway was. You know, I was kind of like I was lost, looking for some directions. You know, I wasn't going to say anything about the Klan until, you know, unless he acted negatively or something, then I would bring it up. But he was very nice. You know, gave me directions to where I needed to go. You know, not that I didn't know, and we left. So I failed in my mission to find Roger Kelly that night. Next day is Monday. Mary worked out of my house here. And so she came here. I said, here, this is Roger Kelly's number. Give him a call. Ask him if he would consent to sitting down. Tell him your boss is writing a book on the Klan. Would he consent to sitting down and giving him an interview? However, do not tell him that I'm black. If he asks, don't lie to him, but don't allude to it. Don't give him reason to ask.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I did not want him to know, 2 reasons. One, I figured, you know, that based upon what this other guy told me, you know, Roger Kelly would kill me if I went to his house or whatever. Obviously, he doesn't like black people. That if he knew that I was black, he wouldn't give me the interview. Number two, I could have called him myself because I'm the one who had the phone number. But he might pick up in my voice that I'm black, right? And say, I'm not talking to you, click, hang up the phone. But I knew that he would know that Mary is white by her voice.
Yeah.
And he would not automatically assume that this white woman works for a black man. I know the mentality. And especially a black man who's writing a book on the Klan because they don't exist. So I was the first one. And so that would up my chances of him saying yes. So if he agrees to do the interview, then he'd figure out that I'm black when he sees me. I want him to see me face to face and then tell me, no, I'm not going to talk to you and walk away or whatever. So she understood. So she called him. He didn't ask what color I was. And he agreed to do the interview. He even invited us to his house. But that day, something, I knew something was going to change that day, so I had to reschedule it. And I said, listen, let's not go to his house. Let's make it in a neutral location. You know, she said, okay. So we decided to do it in the motel above the Silver Dollar Lounge. The lounge was in the bottom of this motel. So Mary and I got the room several hours in advance of the appointment. And I gave her some money to go down the hallway and get soda pop out of the machine and put it in this ice bucket, you know, that's in the room, fill it with ice, get it all cold. Because, you know, I did not know what Mr. Kelly was going to do when he saw me. Would he turn around and walk away? Would he attack me? Would he come in the room and do the interview? Those are the three options, right? But I knew what I was going to do. I was going to be hospitable. I was going to offer my guests a cold beverage, a cold soda. So I got a variety of soda and got it all cold, set the thing on the dresser, and we waited. Right on time at 5:15, it was on Sunday afternoon, there was a knock on the door. And the room just happens to be designed that if you're standing in the hallway, you cannot see who's inside the room. You have to come in the room, go around the corner, and then there's the room, right? So as soon as you walk in the door, the bathroom is right there to the left. And then there's a wall. You got to go around the wall, and there's a room. So I took the lamp table, put it in this far obscure corner of the room, took off the lamp. I put a chair on one side for Mr. Kelly, a chair on this side for me, and I had a black canvas bag beside my chair leg. And in my bag, I had a cassette recorder, which I put in the center of the table, all in hopes that A, he would come in and give me the interview, and B, that he would allow me to record it. And I had some blank cassettes, and I had a copy of the Bible, because the Ku Klux Klan claims to be a Christian organization, and they believe that the Bible preaches racial separation. And they'll show you chapter and verse where it says it, right? According to them. And so I'm all prepared. So Mary, knock on the door, Mary hops up, runs around the corner, opens the door. In walks, official title, Grand Nighthawk. Grand means state, Nighthawk means bodyguard, security, in Klan terminology. So Grand Nighthawk would be the bodyguard for the Grand Dragon, like Imperial Nighthawk is the bodyguard for the Imperial Wizard. In walks this Grand Nighthawk. He's wearing military camouflage. Got that Klan patch on his chest, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center of the cross. Over here are the letters KKK. Embroidered on his cap, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And he has a semi-automatic handgun in a holster on his side. He comes in, he walks around the corner and sees me at the table. He just freezes. Well, Mr. Kelly is walking right behind him, in a dark blue suit and tie, carrying a briefcase. And he did not realize that this guy had stopped. So when he turned the corner, the guy was stopped right there. Mr. Kelly knocked into his back, knocked him forward. So now they both are stumbling around, tripping around, trying to regain their balance. And they're looking all around the room. And I'm just sitting there at the table, looking at them. And I could read their faces. I knew what was going on. There was a lot of apprehension. I could tell what they were thinking out loud on their faces. Yeah. They were thinking, did the receptionist give us the wrong room number? Did we misunderstand something? Or was this an ambush? So I stood up and I displayed both my palms like this to show I had nothing in my hands. And I walked towards Mr. Kelly and I put out my right hand and I said, "Hi, Mr. Kelly, I'm Daryl Davis." And he shook my hand. And the Nighthawk was actually wearing gloves. He pulled off his gloves and shook my hand. And so far so good. I said, "Come on in, please, come on in. Have a seat." Mr. Kelly sat down, and the Nighthawk stood at attention to his right. And before I could sit down, Mr. Kelly says, "Mr. Davis, do you have any form of identification?" I said, "Sure." Went inside, pulled out my wallet, gave him my driver's license. He started looking at it, he goes, "Oh, you live on such and such street." Now I'm wondering, why is he looking at my address? Is he going to come burn a cross in my lawn? I mean, what's up? Hey, I didn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking, right? So, that was a little unsettling when all he has to do is look at my picture on my license and my name and look at me and match it up, right? And give me back my license. So I did not want to let him know that he unsettled me a little bit, but I want to let him know under no circumstances was he to come here with, nefarious intentions, right? And so I said to him, "Yes, Mr. Kelly, that is where I live. And you live at," and I named his house number and his street. So that way he knew I knew where he lived. So I was leveling the playing field, yeah. Right? I was implying, if you come visit me, I might come visit you. So we're going to confine all this visiting to this motel room, right? He smiled, he nodded his head like he understood. I did not find out until months later that I had no reason I was being presumptuous. I had no reason to fear him doing anything stupid. He simply recognized my street name because one of his members lived right down the road here. The street is a bit of a long street. It goes to that neighborhood and then the next neighborhood, and his member lived in the next neighborhood, same street. Or not the same street, but Mr. Kelly had to go down this street to get to the house. So he just recognized the street, pure coincidence. But I had no way of knowing that at the time. So anyway, that member is in a federal prison now for committing a hate crime. He's there for a long time. Anyway, we got on with this interview. And every time Mr. Kelly would say, Mr. Davis, the Bible says, I'd reach down in my bag, pull out my Bible, and hand it to him to show me, I want to see chapter and verse, because that's not my understanding or my interpretation of what it says. And he'd find the chapter and verse, and or my recorder runs out of cassette tape. I'd reach down and get a fresh tape. Every time I reached down, the bodyguard, the Nighthawk, would reach up and put his hand on the butt of the gun. He never pulled it out. He had his hand on the handle. And, that didn't really faze me because, I understood what he was doing. That's his job. His job is to protect his boss. I'm the enemy. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know what's in my bag. So he's doing what he has to do. I got that. I was fine with it. After a little while, maybe 45 minutes, an hour or so, because I was going in and out of the bag, he realized there was nothing in the bag of threat. So he relaxed. I went in and out of the bag. Bodyguard didn't move. He didn't do this stuff anymore. A little over an hour into this interview, Mr. Kelly and I are talking, and he and I are closer than you and I are right now. And the table is just a small table, a lamp table like this. And we're sitting right there, and the bodyguard standing there, and Roger Kelly's sitting right there. And we're just talking, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a very fast, very quick, short noise just happened. Like a that was it. Just that quick and gone. But there was no reason for it, and I didn't know what it was. It happened so fast and didn't last long that my ear could not discern what it was. And almost instantly, I flew up out of my chair because I was going to attack him. In that split second, because my ear could not identify it, I feared for my safety.
Yeah. I
feared for my life. And when you fear for your life, you go into what is called survival mode. And there are only a handful of things you can do in survival mode. Some people, they faint, they pass out, because the fear is so great, the brain cannot process it, and the brain shuts down, and you fall out, you pass out, you faint. I don't do that. Other people, their muscles will constrict, and they'll ball up and they'll tighten, and they can't move. They're frozen like this. You've seen people get into a fight and they curl up into a fetal position. People are kicking them, punching them, and they're not even deflecting the blows. They're shaking like that. They can't move. That's called paralysis by fear. I don't do that either. Another thing people will do is to run away. That's exactly what I would have done had it been an option. And that is your best option. If something is scaring the daylights out of you and you fear for your life, then separate yourself from it. Get as far away from it as you can. Run, take off, go somewhere. That was not an option. Like I said, that would have been my choice, but that was not an option for me because how do you outrun a bullet in a motel room? I'm not armed. My secretary is not armed, right? The only person who I know for sure is armed is the Nighthawk. I see his gun. I don't know if Mr. Kelly has a gun up under his suit jacket or not. All I know is I'm not armed. This man has an arm. So, I'm not going to run and get shot in the back or something, right? The last option is to do a preemptive strike. Get them before they get you. And that's what I was going to do. When I came up out of my chair, I was going to dive across that table, grab the Nighthawk, grab Mr. Kelly, and slam them down to the ground and take away the Nighthawk's gun. So I would immobilize or neutralize the situation. I'd be in charge, right? I came up, I put my hands on the table, and I'm looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes. I didn't say a word. I mean, my eyes were speaking loud and clear. I knew he could read my eyes. My eyes were saying to him, "What did you just do?" He didn't say a word to me, but I could read his eyes. His eyes were saying the same thing to me. "What did you just do?" And the Nighthawk had his hand on his gun, looking at both of us like, "What did either one of y'all just do?" Now, Mary, she was sitting on top of the dresser because there were no more chairs in the room. And she realized what had happened. And she began explaining it to us when it happened again. And what it was, and we all burst out laughing. The ice in the ice bucket next to Mary had begun melting, and the cans of soda were falling down the ice. That was it.
Yeah.
You know, but we were so hyper-focused on each other that we totally forgot about anything over there. You know, so that noise was like, it's like hearing a pin drop in, you know, and it just shocked us. And when we realized what had happened, we all began laughing. There were like two teaching moments. The learning would come later, but these were teaching moments. The learning moments would come later. The first teaching moment would be that we all were human beings in that moment that we heard the noise. Fear is a human emotion. We felt the same emotion. We felt fear of each other because each one of us thought the other person was doing something ominous, had posed a threat to one another, right? I didn't know what he was up to, making some weird noise I couldn't identify. He didn't know what I was up to. You know, was he under attack? I'm thinking, am I getting ready to be attacked? You know? And so, of course, the bodyguard, you know, it's his job to protect his boss, my job to protect myself and my secretary. So we both felt fear in the same moment over the same thing. That humanized us. As soon as the fear was addressed and quelled, we both felt joy in that same moment. We even laughed at the same thing. We're on opposite sides of the fence, ideologically. He's the head of the Klan, I'm a black guy. But yet we're laughing at the same thing and being relieved over the same thing. Because all it was a damn ice cube melting. Somebody almost got shot over an ice cube, right? I mean, we laugh at it now, but it wasn't funny at the time. I mean, it could have been a real serious thing. So we humanize one another in that we both felt fear. When the fear was addressed, we both felt relief and joy. What I learned, the second thing that I learned is ignorance breeds fear. We fear those things of which we're ignorant, those things we don't understand. All because this foreign entity of which we were ignorant, being the bucket of ice, cans of soda, entered into our little comfort zone at the table via the noise that it made, we became fearful of one another because we didn't know what it was. If that fear is not addressed, that fear will escalate to the next level, which is hatred, because we hate the things that frighten us. If the hatred is not addressed, it in turn escalates into anger. We become angry with the things that we hate, which turns into the next step, destruction. So ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, hatred breeds destruction. That whole chain almost unfolded to completion. Had I pounced across the table and hurt one of them, or had the bodyguard drew his gun and shot one of us, meaning my secretary or me, it stopped just short of that last component, destruction. You did see exactly what I'm talking about on August 12th, 4 years ago, 2017, at that white supremacist rally right down here in Charlottesville. On August 12th, there was a lot of ignorance in Charlottesville. There was a lot of fear in Charlottesville. it escalated to a lot of hatred in Charlottesville all that day. And what did it culminate in? It culminated in destruction when a white supremacist got inside his vehicle and intentionally tried to murder as many counter-protesters as he could by driving that car full force into the crowd. He succeeded in injuring 20 people and murdering one young lady named Heather Heyer with that vehicle. And now he's spending life in prison.
And you have spent your life, or a large portion of your life, trying to break that cycle, right? Trying to break the cycle of ignorance of the very people who, when you first meet them, avowedly hate you. And in my own research of you and knowing the little that I do about your own life, the principles that seem to guide your activity, your interest in meeting with these people is, one, a belief that it all starts with ignorance, that's the beginning, and that if you can break the ignorance, you've got a decent shot at breaking the other sequences. I
feel that the destruction, the hatred, and the fear are all byproducts, all symptoms of the ignorance. The ignorance is the nucleus. That's the cancer. If you cure that, all the other things don't materialize. And I feel that we spend way too much time in this country addressing the byproducts, addressing those symptoms.
The symptoms.
Yeah. It's like putting a Band-Aid on cancer. Now, you got to go down to if you get bone cancer, you don't put a Band-Aid on top or some topical cream. You got to go down to the bone and hit it with the radiation or the chemo or whatever.
And you have gone directly to the source many times and have been successful many times.
Right. And I mean, not everybody's going to change. Now, understand, when you see my name in the media or whatever, they always get it wrong for some reason. It'll say, black musician converts X number of white supremacists or KKK people. I always make it a point to say, no, I did not convert anybody. I didn't even convert one person. But I am the impetus for over 200 white supremacists, KKK, neo-Nazi, alt-right, whatever, or just the racists next door, to convert themselves. I give them reason to rethink that ideology, and they began converting themselves. I never set out to convert anybody. Do I hope that they'll convert? Yes, absolutely, because it will better their lives, and it will better the lives of other people, right? But my mission is not to tell them, hey, you need to get out of this thing, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. I want them to come to that conclusion themselves. So I provide them the tools and the ideas and perceptions that they need to arrive at those conclusions.
And what are the tools, what are the strategies that you have used? I know you meet with a lot of people personally. You meet with them face to face and you have long conversations with them. What are the strategies that you've seen in your own life with this experience that have worked?
Okay. Several things. One, learn as much as you can about your adversary. Now, this goes with any adversarial situation, not just race. In fact, we can take race off the table. There are tons of hot topics: abortion, nuclear weapons, global warming, the insurrection, the presidential election, whatever. All these hot topics, right? You're on one side, somebody else is on the other side. Learn as much as you can about the other side's position. How did they arrive there? Why did they arrive there? What is their premise for believing, that? Be open-minded, but know who you are, though. Know who you are, know your position, but be open-minded to hearing somebody else. Put yourself in their shoes, all right? So you have that going, number one. Do your homework. Number two, be willing to listen to things that you don't like, things that you may even find offensive, that you may find somebody attacking you for, your skin color, your religion, your whatever, don't take it personally. That's why I say know who you are. Okay? Keep your ego behind you. Don't let it get in front of you, because it will devolve the conversation. It'll become unproductive, because they know how to push buttons. They know, what to say. If you're Jewish, they know all kinds of stuff to get you going. If you're black, they know all kinds of stuff. If you're gay, they do that all day long. They're the experts at offending. So, you're not going to faze them, and they expect you to push back. If they call you a nigger or a kike or, a fag or, whatever derogatory terms, they want to call you. They know buttons to push. And then as soon as you start acting out on that, you reinforce their belief.
Yeah.
Right? So know who you are, keep your ego behind you. Because if you don't know who you are and you go into a room with them, they're going to tell you who you are, and you might walk out believing them. So know who you are first. And understand something. They don't know you. They do not know you. So why are you letting them define who you are? They're meeting you for the first time. So why would I get mad at somebody who's telling me I'm a criminal because I have black skin, or I'm lazy because most black people are lazy, or I'm dumb, I'm unintelligent because most black people are dumb, and they think black people have smaller brains than white people.
Yeah.
Is it offensive to hear that from somebody sitting across from me? Sure. Am I offended by it? No. And the reason why I'm not offended by it is because that person doesn't know me. He just met me. All he sees is this. And that determines my intelligence. It determines my work ethic or my criminality. No. If my parents were telling me something like that, yeah, maybe I believe them because they raised me. They brought me into this world. But not somebody who just walked in my room. Why would I believe them? They're just spouting off. So keep the ego behind. Number 2, okay? Number 3, your credibility is your most important asset in any situation. All right? Somebody's credibility is their most important asset above and beyond all else. You only have one opportunity to make a good first impression. All right? If you're lucky, you may have a second or third opportunity to make an impression, but you only have one chance to make a good first impression. Most people will judge you, unfortunately sometimes, on their first impression of you. So when I meet with these people, they don't like me. I am not the object of their affection, right? That's why they're in the Klan. They don't like black people. They don't like Jewish people. They don't like, whatever. So they go so far as to join an organization that practices not liking those people. So when they see me, their temperature goes up. Their wall goes up. They're ready to radiate vitriol and put me in an inferior position and let me know that they're superior. That's why they're called supremacists, because they think that they're supreme. And in order to establish supremacy, they must make you feel less than, right? So you want to, your first meeting, you're planting a seed. Nobody's going to change overnight, right? It may take repeat visits. And each time you come back, you've already planted the seed. You got to water that seed. You got to nurture it, feed it, plant food or whatever, that makes it grow. So you need a repeat visit. If you are credible, they can tell if you're not credible. When you're talking to somebody, if they're BSing you or whatever, and they're not credible. If you are credible, even though they don't like you, that increases your chances of coming back. So they don't like me, and I say, hey, listen, I'm credible. I'm always transparent. I always, I don't kiss anybody's rear end. If I don't agree with something, I'll let them know I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to attack them. I say, well, this is my opinion, or here's what I know to be a fact. And if I present somebody with a fact, I'm going to tell them this is a fact, and you can research it yourself to find out that that I'm giving you a fact. But if I have an opinion, I always let them know, listen, this is my opinion. This is what I think. I don't know to be factual. It's my opinion. So that way they're not holding me accountable for a fact. And if I'm wrong, correct me. So now, even though they don't like me, and I say at the end of the interview, hey, listen, I appreciate the information you gave me. I want to take it home and process it. And, can we get together again maybe in 2 weeks? I just wanted to do a little follow-up. Now, they don't like me, but I've been credible with them. Yeah, okay, that's cool. They'll get together with me again. But if they didn't like me, they don't like me already, but if I wasn't credible, they'd be like, nah, we're done. I give you the interview, that's it. Mm-hmm. It's just like, if you ask some girl out on a date, you don't know her. First time you met her in a bar, met her at a party, whatever. You take her out. If you all had a good time and she's impressed with you the first time, you say, hey, can we get together again next week? Yeah, sure. You date her again. If you did not impress her that first date, don't call her again, okay? Because she's not going to be going out with you again. She either make up an excuse, why she can't go out the next week, or I'm not really interested, and that's it. So your credibility is your biggest asset. So always be truthful, always be transparent, always be respectful. You don't have to respect what they're saying, but respect their right to say it. Something that I've learned, I've been to 57 different countries on 6 continents, right? There are 195 in the world. And I met 2 guys in the last 3 months. One is an American who's been to 125, and another one is from Estonia, and he's been to 160. So I'm kind of behind.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm kind of behind. But in the 57 that I've been to, and I told you 49 states, I've been exposed to enough variety of cultures, religions, ethnicities, beliefs, all that kind of stuff that have taught me something. No matter how far I've gone from this country, right next door to Canada or Mexico or halfway around the world, no matter how different the people I encounter may be, they don't look like me, they don't speak my language, they don't worship as I do. I always conclude everyone I met was a human being. All right? And as such, every human being basically wants the same 5 things in their lives. We all want to be loved. We all want to be respected. We all want to be heard. Very important. We all want to be treated fairly. And we all want the same thing for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we employ those 5 core values, or even any of those 5 core values, in any culture or any society in which we might find ourselves unfamiliar, I will guarantee that your navigation in that culture or society will be a lot more smooth and a lot more positive. I just consider white supremacy to be another culture.
Yeah.
So I employ those values, and they work. Now, does everybody change? No. There will be those who will go to their grave being hateful and violent and racist. They will never change. But if somebody like that is willing to sit down and have a conversation, there is an opportunity to foster that possible change. Yeah. And I've had more success than I've had failures, And I'm a firm believer that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Nothing gets resolved without talking about it.
Yeah. I know our time is coming to a close together, and the name of this podcast is called Keep Talking, and that's part of the idea as a cultural show, is to bring up issues that are difficult in our culture, to talk about them. And I, first of all, just want to say how much I admire the courage and the effort that you've put into your own work over the course of your adult life. I watched and then rewatched the documentary about you called Accidental Courtesy in the last few days. And in closing, I would love to get your thoughts generally about America now and your suggestions for it. Perhaps you will reiterate what you just said in terms of the 5 basic core human needs that may be the North Star for us in continuing these conversations to make a better and more perfect union. I remember in the documentary, one of the scenes that stuck with me was you meeting with some activists in Baltimore, and they were sitting down, and the idea was that that you were going to speak with them, to talk to them, some black activists in Baltimore who began hurling accusations at you that you were no better than people who were wearing a robe. They didn't see your attempts and your successes to change people. That didn't seem to resonate with them. It wasn't something that they wanted to either hear or talk to you about. And it's becoming more common, it seems, in our culture to believe that it's impossible to overcome racism. You know, people are born racist, and that is a message that is more common than I remember hearing when I was a kid. I mean, I was born and raised on Martin Luther King speeches, and that's always been my North Star of treating people as individuals and as equals under the law. Where do we go from here, in your perspective? Is it continuing to emphasize the humanity in all of us in continued conversation among people who disagree with each other, that we have to get back to that? What do you see as the guidepost, the North Star for us, for Americans, to try to continue to improve our republic that we all live in?
Okay. Back to that chain of events, well, let me tell you about that scene.
Yeah.
That scene, you saw about 8 minutes in the film, Accidental Courtesy. That actual scene went on for about an hour, and it almost became physically violent. And you could see it boiling to that point.
Yeah.
And, like you said, they were focused on one thing, and did not want to see anything else beyond that. However, about a year later, they reached out to me, and they'd been seeing me on TV or articles or whatever, and they were, getting a better understanding of what I was doing, and they wanted to get together and have dinner and talk.
Wow.
And we got together up in Baltimore, and we talked, and we agreed to work together. They had a better understanding of what I do. And they realized that what I do is important, what they do is important, but that we need to work together, not against each other, for the same goal, right? So we agreed to do that, and we started doing that. The one guy, the older guy, he who was like very vicious or whatever in the movie, he and I got together a bunch of times, and then he began falling off the wagon. He reverted back to where he was in the movie. So he's back at that mindset now. Will he change again? I don't know. The younger guy, he seemed to change. His mind was opened up a little bit more. Hopefully he'll continue in that path. I get, now they were members of Black Lives Matter, Baltimore chapter. I want to make clear that they do not represent the entire Black Lives Matter movement. There are factions, Black Lives Matter is not an organization as much as it is a movement. The founders did not want to centralize and trademark the names. So anybody, you, me, anybody can go out and start our own Black Lives Matter movement and appoint ourselves president of this faction of Black Lives Matter. You got some factions that are all black, some that consist of black supremacists, some that are blacks and whites working together in the Black Lives Matter faction, some that are predominantly white Black Lives Matter factions, all right? And that's fine. But the problem is they all are not on the same page.
Yeah.
Where if you had a centralized organization like the NAACP, the Boy Scouts of America, the Red Cross, those are centralized organizations with one headquarters, one president. Policy is created in the headquarters and disseminated to all the chapters around the country. That's not the case here. In this case, you got all these factions, each one has its own little president, and some are aggressive, some are, they want to run around town and spray paint graffiti and BLM all over walls and statues and this, that, and the other, and destroy stuff. Others want to sit down with the state or city or county legislature and try to work out, laws and bills to be passed to remove statues or do whatever. They're more conscientious that way.
Yeah.
Some are aggressive, some are passive, whatever. So they're not all on the same page. But what happens is when the media refers to them, they don't say the Brooklyn chapter of Black Lives Matter, or the Bronx chapter, or the Sacramento chapter, or the San Francisco chapter, or the Austin or the Houston chapter. They just say Black Lives Matter. So if one chapter is doing good and another chapter is doing bad, you can't differentiate. They just say Black Lives Matter, and everybody gets the brunt of whatever negativity happened. Mm-hmm. So there have been about 6 different factions of Black Lives Matter. Detroit, one in New York, one in Ohio, one in Mississippi, I forgot where the other ones are, that have contacted me and said, hey, do you give workshops? Can you teach us to do what you do? And then there have been other ones that have just, ripped me a new rear end because, they don't agree. So, they're all over the map. And while they have made a lot of accomplishments, they've also shot themselves in the foot by not being on the same page, by having too many chefs in the same kitchen trying to do the same recipe.
Yeah. Daryl, I've wanted to meet you for a long time, and I know you're a busy guy who's in high demand, and you have a lot going on in your life and your career. And I think I speak for a lot of people in this country in expressing gratitude and admiration for you and what you've done with your life. And in a time that seems, at least on the surface, like it's a divided country, I think you are, and your work speaks to the possibility of change, of people who have over time, with enough conversation and removing ignorance and just focusing on our common humanity, an ability for people to evolve and grow into better people. I think that's something we all can get behind and work towards. It's been an honor of mine and a pleasure to meet you today, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And let me just say 2 more things here.
Please.
The last thing that another tool to put in the toolkit is this. When you're meeting with an adversary, again, it doesn't matter what the topic is. I mean, today we're talking a lot about race, but it could be anything.
Yeah.
Where you have, opposite sides. Understand something. You cannot change somebody's reality, even if it's not real. It's their reality. It's all. People only know what they know, right? If they know something to be real in their mind, it's real. One's perception is one's reality. Whatever they perceive becomes their reality, even if it's not accurate. All right? So, with that in mind, we spend a lot of time in this country trying to change somebody's reality. It's not going to work. Here's what you have to do. You have to offer them, don't attack their reality. It's what they know. Even though you've seen different, and you know what they know is not accurate because they have not seen the things that you've seen. You can't make them see what they can't, what they've never seen. What you do is you offer them a better perception, offer them better perspectives. Because if they resonate with one of the perceptions that you've offered, they will change their own reality because their perception becomes their reality. Case in point, you said you have some brothers and stuff. Okay, so let's say you have a little brother, 7, 8 years old, right? And he goes with his scout troop or his class or somebody, his friend's parents, take him to a magic show. And, the magician, David Copperfield, whoever, is on the stage. And he asks for a female volunteer. Of course, 50 women in the audience are going to raise their hands, right? And he looks around. You, in the red blouse, come on up. Lady hops up, trots up on stage, puts the microphone on her face. What's your name? Where are you from? Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to climb up on the step stool, get into this box, this long box. Put your feet out the holes on that side, and put your head out the hole at this end. Lady gets up, gets in the box, lies down, puts her feet out there, puts her head out this hole. Magician closes the lid. Then he takes a chainsaw and all the way through the box. Chainsaw comes out the bottom of the box. To your 7 or 8 year old brother, he is aghast. This man has just cut this woman in half. he saw the chainsaw pass from the top of the box and come out the bottom. And she was lying in there. And then he's telling you this. And you're like shaking your head, no, it didn't happen. And he's like, yeah. And then he took the half of the feet and he moved that half of the box over to the left side of the stage and the half of the head over to stage right. And then he walked over and talked to the head. And the woman's head started talking back to him. And then he brought the two halves back together and opened the lid and she came out and there was no blood. And you're like, listen, it's an illusion. No, I saw it. I was there. You weren't there. I saw it. He put the chainsaw right through the, he's going, the more you attack his reality, the more he's going to defend it because he knows what he saw. Yeah. You did not see it. People only know what they know. He perceived that. His perception is his reality. That man cut that woman in half, and there's no telling him he did not see what he saw. That's his perception. So you are wasting your time trying to change his reality. What you do is you offer him a better perception. You say, look, is it possible that just maybe when he asked for volunteers and all those women raised their hand and he picked out that lady in the red top, you think maybe it's possible she might work for him? Maybe she knows the trick. She travels with him everywhere he goes, and he planted her in the audience in that particular seat. She's always there, sitting basically in the same seat every show, wherever he goes around the country. And she knows the trick. And when she gets inside the box, there's already a pair of mannequin legs wearing the same stockings and same shoes that she has on, lying on the floor of the box. She takes them and sticks them out the holes. She brings her own feet and legs up under her chest. So her whole body is on that side of the box. So when he cuts the box in half, that saw never even touches her. And then he separates the boxes. So the feet, the box, the side with the mannequin dummy legs are over there on stage right, and the side with the head, her whole body is over there on stage left. So of course she's going to talk back to him because you can't see her cuddled up in there. And then when he brings the two halves back together, she just pulls those legs out and leaves them on the floor of the box, and she climbs out. And the kid's thinking, well, I guess that's the only way that could work, right? You've offered him a better perception, and then he changes his own reality. That's what I do. I don't tell them they're wrong. I know they're wrong. I've been to places they will never go. It doesn't make me a better human being than them. It simply gives me a broader perspective. I've seen a lot of things that they've never seen. I've seen some things that they will never see. Some of them may travel one day, perhaps. A lot of people don't travel. They only know what they know within their little bubble. They don't go outside the bubble or outside their neighborhood, So how do you get them to see something, that they've never seen? You give them a perception. You bring it to them vicariously. So I don't attack their realities. I just give them other perceptions that make more sense. And if they resonate with one of those, they change their own reality. And that's how you do it.
And that's being done without judging them, right? Without trying to make them feel stupid. And
exactly.
I think that has been what is painful to watch culturally in the U.S. of late, is it seems like that is happening more and more, where people, the self-righteousness of you're stupid and I know what I'm talking about, and a lack of finesse of doing the perception move, which you just articulated.
And, in conclusion, I want to say one thing. Where are we headed? A lot of people don't talk about this, but, and why they don't talk about it, I don't know. The media don't talk about it, but this is what's happening. People in these movements, they know. The media knows it too, but they don't discuss it. Let me give background. This country was built on a two-tier society. White supremacy at the top, slavery at the bottom. And as we progress through the decades, we progress like this. Maybe like this, but never like this, on an even plane, right? When I was a kid, the black population in this country was 12%. Native Americans were 1%. Hispanic people around 2%. Asians around 3%. Today, Native Americans remain at 1%. They have not grown. Black people remain at 12%. Well, we're like 12.9, almost 13%. So we really haven't grown. Asians have almost doubled. They're like at 5.9, almost 6%. All right, so they doubled. But it's still 5-6%, not a whole lot. Hispanic people have more than doubled, more than tripled. They're like at 17 point something percent. All right. So back then when I was a kid, whites were like 84, 86%. Right. So whites of the racist or supremacist mentality, their biggest nemesis, of course, were black people. You know, they didn't care about 1% Native American or 2% Hispanic. 12%? Oh no, that's way too much. You know, we got to control those people. So anyway, today, if you take just 12% black people and 17% Hispanic, that right there, 12 and 17, let alone the Asians and anybody else, that's a 29% non-white. This is happening.
Yeah.
All right. It is well predicted in the year 2042, which is 21 years from now, 2 decades, for the first time in our history, this country will be 50-50.
Yeah.
50% white, 50% non-white. Non-white meaning black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, right? There are a lot of white people in this country who welcome that, who don't have a problem with that. Hey, that's evolution, no big deal. You know, I don't see any problem. But there is a large swath of white people who do have a problem with that, all right? Because when you have sat on the throne of power for 402 years, that's when I first came here, right? 1619, slaves. When you've sat on the throne of power for 402 years, you don't want to see your throne legs being chopped down and your butt being lowered down to the level of the inferior people. You know, you want to stay on that throne. You want to maintain that power, that supremacy, and that, you know, and that's normal with anybody. I mean, as a musician, you know, if you put out a record and it goes to number 1 on the charts, you don't want to see it fall down to number 99. You want to keep it up there at the top, in the top 10. You know, look at our last president. Okay, he was only on the throne of power for what? 4 years. He went crazy. You know, he didn't want to get off. He still doesn't want to get off. He's trying to overturn the damn election, right? That's power. All right, so they are doing whatever they can do to stop this. They don't want to see 2042 come. And so they call it RAHOWA, RAHOWA. Look it up sometime, RAHOWA. It stands for Racial Holy War, or for short, the Race War. Okay, that's what the white supremacists call the race war, RAHOWA. They also call it the Boogaloo, all right? They're looking for the race war to happen to keep that supremacy. When I first started doing this almost 4 decades ago, 37 years ago, actively, there was only the Ku Klux Klan, some neo-Nazi groups, white power skinheads. That was about it. Today, the KKK, the neo-Nazis, the skinheads, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys, the Three Percenters, the Vanguard, all these different groups, and they're all saying, "Come join us, come join us." We're going to take our country back, take our country back. We're going to make America great again. Who says again? Anybody who's going to run for president, you, me, anybody, we're all going to say, "I'm going to make America great," or "I'm going to make America greater than it's ever been." Who says, "I'm going to make America great again"? Again. When was again? Back when I was drinking from a separate water fountain, when I couldn't vote, when I was refused service in a restaurant? Was that when again was? Anyway, we're going to build that wall, send those people back to where they belong, all that kind of stuff. That's what Matt Cole told me in 1974, okay? And again in 1982, if you don't leave, you'll be exterminated by the upcoming race war. He told me that in 1974, all right? What did Dylan Roof say he was doing? Trying to start the race war, all right? So now all these groups are trying to recruit people into them, and people are fearing, they want to take our country back. You saw in Charlottesville, all these people marching, the Jews will not replace us, all that kind of nonsense. They feel their identity is being erased. Do you know the term white flight?
Yeah.
It barely exists anymore.
Yeah.
Because the color of the landscape of America has changed so much that anywhere you go, there's already somebody there who doesn't look like you. So where do you fly now? White flight is on its way out, And so these people are feeling their identity is being erased. What people, like Matt Cole told me, we cannot be a pure race if we're miscegenating with mud races such as yours. We are becoming a mongrel race, right? That's the mongrel part, all right? So they call it, what people in the Klan and the neo-Nazis tell me, they say, Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation, race mixing, all right? So these groups are recruiting people, right? And when people go and join these groups that promise to make America great again, or take our country back, or send those people back to where they belong, and they don't do it, some of these people get frustrated. And they say, you know what? If the Klan can't do it, or the National Socialist Movement can't do it, or so-and-so can't do it, I'm going to do it myself. And that's when they go solo, like a Dylan Roof, and walk into a black church, boom, 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 boom. Murder 9 black people doing Bible study. Go into the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, boom, 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 boom. Shoot up 11 Jews. Go into the Walmart in El Paso, Texas, and murder 23 Mexicans. Go to the Sikh Indian temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and murder 6 Sikh Indian worshipers. These are called lone wolves, right? And we have intelligence agencies in this country that have operatives who can fit the role, fit the part of some of these groups, and they can join these groups undercover and gather, look like members, and gather intelligence and report it back and foil some of these plots. In fact, you saw exactly what I'm talking about a few months ago when that crazy group in Michigan was going to kidnap and murder the governor, right? We already had intelligence in there. That's how we gathered that information and quashed that plot. And now those people are in jail, right? Okay, so we have the ability to infiltrate some of these groups. How do you infiltrate a lone wolf? You can't. How do you get in the mind of one person? You can't. So as we get closer and closer to 2042, we're going to see more and more of those lone wolves. You saw one a few months ago when that 17-year-old boy, Kyle Rittenhouse, who came over from Illinois with his gun, got some water from the cops, and went and shot 3 counter-protesters, murdered 2 of them, blew the 3rd guy's arm off, and then went back home, all by himself, 17 years old. That's a lone wolf. And every time law enforcement kills one of those people or arrests them and goes and raids their house, what do they find? A cache of automatic weapons that are being stored for what? The race war, right? So, like I said, that's what the insurrection was all about on January 6th, okay? How many people down there did you see of the thousands and thousands of people outside and the 1,000 that were inside? How many people did you see that looked like me or looked Hispanic or whatever, or looked Asian? And there are plenty of Black Americans, plenty of Asian Americans, plenty of Hispanic Americans. I mean, not as many as white Americans, but I saw maybe 1 or 2 Black people down there in that crowd. And to me, it looked like they were just observing, like, what the hell is going on? I didn't see them, bashing in the window of the Capitol. You know what I mean? In fact, I didn't see anybody in the Capitol that was Black other than the police, or any other color other than white. But what I did see in the Capitol was somebody marching around with a Confederate flag and another guy wearing a Camp Auschwitz t-shirt. I don't have to ask what's that about. Take our country back? You're in the Capitol saying, with the Confederate flag, I know what you want. Yeah. You're saying Camp Auschwitz, I know what you want. You want to get rid of the Jews and go back to slavery and get rid of black people. You want to maintain that thing. You don't want 2042 to happen. That's why they tried to overthrow this Capitol and this election. And we need to talk about that. Do you remember? Yeah, you're old enough. Do you remember 1999? Everybody was going into a panic about the year 2000.
Sure.
My VCR is going to stop working. Yeah. The banks are going to shut down. The computers are going to blow up. I'm going to lose all my money. People were taking their money, their cash, out of the bank, hiding it in their bedroom, burying it in their backyards and stuff because of what? Y2K. Right? People just went crazy. 2042, and of course, nothing happened with Y2K, right? Your VCR still works. You had to reset the clock and stuff because they didn't go to 2000 or something. But anyway, 2042 is the white supremacist Y2K. They are freaking out about that. And you'll be around in 2042. I may or may not be, because I'm a lot older than you, but that's what people are freaking out about in this movement. This is why you're seeing all these groups now popping up, why we got so many of these supremacist groups. They want to maintain that supremacy, and they're seeing their numbers come down. And 2042 is going to be 50-50. Between 2045 and 2050, for the first time in this country, whites will become the minority.
Yeah.
And if you are a supremacist, that is freaking you out. That is getting you all disconcerted, and you got to do something. You're a patriot. You got to defend your country. This country was founded by white people. The Constitution was written by white people. This is a white man's homeland. We're going to protect our country. I'm going to be a patriot. That's the mentality, and that's what you have to. You can't tell them they're wrong. You need to get off this. You've got to show them a better perception, and they will change their own reality.
I have to ask you if you think it's possible before 2042 to avert the worst case scenario or some of the worst case scenarios that you just articulated, an increase in these lone wolf shootings.
Yes. I mean, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
It's going to get worse. And not that I'm a pessimist, I'm an optimist, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this work. Right? I'm just being honest. But we have to do it the right way. And we have become too reactive instead of proactive. Look, we're just now, within the last 2 years, calling those people domestic terrorists. Terrorists for the last however long has been a term that we reserved for people of Middle Eastern descent. Timothy McVeigh was a terrorist.
Yeah.
Okay? These people who did the Capitol were terrorists. The people in Charlottesville were terrorists. Regardless of what good intentions they may thought they had, and some of them really think that they have the right intentions and good intentions, and may otherwise be decent people. Some of those people who tried to overthrow the Capitol are good family people with bad ideas and wrong intentions. But they are terrorists. And we're just now designating that as domestic terrorism. Before, it's, Dylan Rufio, he has some mental issues. No. Anybody who goes out and kills people have mental issues. But yet you accuse bin Laden or whoever of being a terrorist. You don't talk about him having a mental issue. What's the difference between him and Dylan Roof? Same thing. I mean, he did it on a grander scale.
Yeah.
Okay, but he's still a terrorist. I don't want to hear about Dylan Roof's mental issues, or Robert Bowers at Tree of Life Synagogue's mental issues, or Wade Page, who did the Sikh temple in Wisconsin, having mental issues. We know they have the mental issues. Anybody who does mass murder has a mental issue, but it's also called a terrorist. And we're just now assigning those terms. What's taking us so long?
Yeah.
That's being reactive, not facing the truth.
Yeah.
This country has a problem, and we need to address it now, not cross that bridge when we get to it. 2042 is only a moment away in time.
Daryl, you are at the forefront of this, and again, I think I speak for a lot of people in expressing gratitude for the work you have done and will continue to do, hopefully for many, many years, because we need you. I think you're an extremely important person in this country, and I wish you the best of luck. And I think I speak for a lot of people in wanting to be a part of that in some small way to avert some of these scenarios that you articulated. Thank you for doing this, man. I really do appreciate the time and the thought and the energy behind your conversation and your efforts to improve the world.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And the best way we all can fight together is, dedicate our time, our energy, our resources to promoting education and exposure. Education and exposure is what cures ignorance.
Yeah.
That is the cure. If you cure ignorance, then there's nothing to fear.
Yeah.
With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. With nothing to hate, there's nothing to destroy. So stop worrying about those symptoms, focusing on destruction and fear and hate. Focus your time, energy, and whatever on curing the ignorance, and we can do it through education and exposure.
That's a great place to start. Thanks again, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.